Good day, everybody. This is the Bible in a Year 2021, and this is the replacement video for day 98. The replacement video for day 98. So if you've attempted to listen to this day and you had no sound, it wasn't your computer. It was because something happened to the recording on that day. So we're just redoing it here, and we'll get it published straight away. So that's day 98, and we're looking at First Samuel chapter 1. Um, well, chapter 1, 2, and 3, actually. So let's get right into this. So we've just come through this huge mess in Judges. We see people are doing whatever they think is best. There's not a whole bunch of Yahweh worship going on. There's a lot of the other gods that have been adopted by Israel, which, that was a no-no. The number one way to break the law is to put other gods ahead of Yahweh, and this is what they've been doing. And yet, when we open up here in First Samuel chapter 1, we open up to a faithful family, an Ephraimite family, who are still devoted to Yahweh and following the regulations of coming to worship where he has set up camp. We're introduced to Hannah. And we know when reading through this, Hannah had a really tough time of it. She was barren, and yet she was faithful. She stayed faithful to the Lord. She was faithful to her husband. And we read here in verses 5 to 7, but he would give only one part of it to Hannah, because this was the requirement. This was according to law. When he brought in his offerings, it would be divided up in the family. And Hannah, because she is without child, received one part of it. And it says, but he give only one part of it to Hannah, though he loved her, because the Lord had kept her from conceiving. Wow, the Lord had kept her from conceiving. I kept her from conceiving. Doesn't mean that the Lord keeps everybody from conceiving. If there is a problem that people have, it could just be a fault of humanity, our fallen nature. Sometimes things don't work the way they're designed to work, and we can take care of that in prayer. But in this case, this is about Hannah. And anytime that the Lord prevents something, it's usually for the purpose of intimacy. It's usually for getting people to move closer to Him so that they become more desperate. So because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving, her rival would make fun of her mercilessly just to bother her. So that is what took place year after year. Whenever Hannah went to the Lord's house, Peninnah would make fun of her. Then she would cry and wouldn't eat anything. So she wouldn't even take part in the offering. In verse 8, she is dearly loved by her husband. You can't help but feel that as you're reading this. He says, Hannah, why are you crying? Her husband, Elkanah, I would say to her, why won't you eat? Why are you so sad? Aren't I worth more to you than 10 sons? He just loves her, and he's really hoping that his love will satisfy her. But in an age when having children gave you a sense of worth and usefulness, it was a disgrace to be without child. And then we find this thing of the solemn pledge. This solemn pledge keeps popping up. We know once you make a solemn pledge, you are expected to follow through no matter what. And sometimes solid pledges can come against Yahweh's specific will, but honoring a solemn pledge is important, so he will work it in somehow to what's going on. Then she made this promise, Lord of heavenly forces, just look at your servant's pain and remember me. Don't forget your servant. Give her a boy, then I'll give him to the Lord for his entire life. No razor will ever touch his head. So this is the second Nazarite we're coming across. Samson was one. Now here we have Samuel, who's being offered as another, um, in this way. Later on in the New Testament, we'll have John the Baptist, who was a Nazarite from birth. So here we find that Eli, who is the priest, is lacking discernment big time. He's serving from a place of his flesh. He's doing what he thinks is best. As a priest, he has no real connection to the Lord, and that's why things are going terribly wrong at this time. And so we see here there's a lack of discernment. Now, Hannah was praying in her heart. Her lips were moving, but her voice was silent. So Eli thought she was drunk. Then we have the Lord responding to Hannah. You know, he resisted her so that she had to come in close. She comes in and she makes this solemn pledge, which she wouldn't have done if she had been able to conceive and have children. But because she couldn't, she makes this solemn pledge. She enters into this place of intimacy with the Lord, and in that place, he responds to her. So in the course of time, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, which means I asked the Lord for him. Decent name, isn't it? I asked the Lord for him. Um, and yeah, I've already mentioned this. This is the second lifelong Nazarite. I'll bring the boy when he is weaned, she told her husband, so he can be presented to the Lord and stay there permanently. I will offer him as a Nazarite forever. Now remember, he's an Ephraimite. He's an Ephraimite. That is not a Levite. Okay, that's an Ephraimite. uh, and um, and so it's not natural for him then to be brought up by the priest or priests. But he is being dedicated as a Nazarite and being left to the priest. So in verse 23, we find, you remember, according to the regulations that have been put in place, that a husband can disagree with a wife's pledge, and it can be broken when he finds out about it. Um, but if he stays silent, then he's coming to agreement with it. And this is what we're finding here. We're finding that Elkanah has he's heard this pledge, he's coming to agreement with it, and now he's insisting that his wife follows through on it. So he's telling her, let's go up and do our yearly pilgrimage. And she's saying, no, I have to wean the boy first. So he says, do what seems best to you, said her husband Elkanah. Stay here until you've weaned him. But may the Lord bring to pass what you've promised. So the woman stayed home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. That's pretty significant stuff there. And we find here in verse 28, she keeps her pledge. So now I give this boy back to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is given to the Lord. Then they worshiped there before the Lord. That's her and her husband are worshiping. They're giving up this child, and they stand there and worship. Uh, I mean, what words can you find to even express that? Samuel's conceived in love. He is a gift from the Lord. He is a result of this solemn pledge. He's raised in this holy place, and he's destined to be something incredible. And then we see here in 1 Samuel 2, we get a little bit of understanding of how they're seeing Yahweh at this time. And through the song that she sings, and they recognize that he is a source of life and death. He's a source of prosperity. He is the source. Okay, it should be there. He is the source, okay, of life and death. He is the source of prosperity. Um, he has a heart for the poor and disadvantaged. That's Hannah is looking at that. She's experienced that herself. She was disadvantaged, and his eyes were on her. Um, he is authority over all creation. He decides on life. He's also supposed to decide on death, but he decides on life, and and he rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked. So we still have that idea running. We've heard that all the way from Job. Uh, Eli's sons, what can we say? They are a result of really society. They what's going on in society. They're not paying attention to Yahweh. They're not paying attention to the regulations. They're allowing society to influence them, and how they act is exactly what's going on in society. They do what they think is best. It says, now Eli's sons were despicable men who didn't know the Lord. And we know that because of the things that they did. Um, in verse 17, the sin of these priestly assistants was very serious to the Lord's sight, because they were disrespecting the Lord's own offering. So that was the first thing, is that they were they wouldn't allow, they were taking the fat, which was the Lord's portion. They wouldn't let it be boiled. They wanted to roast it with the fat. They wanted a good steak, and they're not allowed to, as the priests. We later also find out that they're married, but yet they're having sex with all the female servants in the temple as well. So they're just, yeah. In verse 21, we read this: the Lord paid attention to Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the Lord's service. It's just, this is, there are people who have a problem of thinking that the Lord rewards, but he does. And the word tells us that. And it says that he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. That's what the word says. And there's a reason. He wants to bless. He wants to reward. He wants to pour this out. He wants us to have abundant life. Um, does that mean you're rich over the top? Not whatsoever. Not unless he has purpose for that. But he does want you to enjoy life. That's without a doubt. We see that throughout this. Unless you're called to specific purposes. If there's things that he's called you to specifically, if he's called you to mission fields, if he's called you to martyr, if he's called you to some of these things. But not everybody is called to those things. Just like not everybody's called to be an apostle. Not everybody's called to be all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff. You get understanding what I'm saying here. In verse 25, consider this truth right here. And then thank Jesus. Okay, just listen to this truth. If someone sins against someone else, God can intercede. This is Eli talking to his sons. If someone sins against someone else, God can intercede. But if someone sins against the Lord, who will intercede then? But they wouldn't obey their father because the Lord wanted to kill them. And this is exactly what Jesus did for us. He interceded for us. We have sinned. We have rebelled against Father. We have hurt him. We have done things specifically against him. Paul was very sensitive of that because he attacked the church. He attacked the body, and he constantly remembered that. But Jesus died to intercede. He died to intercede in those things. That's just, yeah, thank you, Jesus. In verse 29, the prophet comes in now to Eli and gives warning. And he says to him, why then do you kick my sacrifices and my offerings, the very ones I commanded for my dwelling place? Because this is the big thing that they're doing against him. Why do you why do you respect your sons more than me, getting fat off the best parts of every offering from my people Israel? Eli should have fired them. He should have taken them out and had them stoned. There's all kinds of things that he should have done, but he didn't, because these are his sons. And he allowed them, being his sons, to be more important than in the position of high priest, to be obedient to the Lord. He placed them above the Lord. And this was Eli's sin. This was his sin, and for which the consequences are given because of that. Now, in chapter 3, understand the condition of Israel when Samuel receives his calling. He's serving in the temple, but he hasn't called yet. He hasn't yet heard the Lord, but he's about to hear the Lord and understand the condition of Israel. Now, the boy Samuel was serving the Lord under Eli. The Lord's word was rare at that time, and visions weren't widely known. They had lost their sensitivity to him. They had lost their sensitivity. They lost their ears to hear. They had lost their ability to hear the Lord's voice. The Lord's word was rare at that time, and visions weren't widely known. But guess what happens? The Lord said to Samuel, who's just a young boy, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of all who hear it tingle. So Samuel is called and he receives his first prophecy. Um, he receives this, but it's not the best news for his master, for his trainer, his teacher, for really his second father. This is Eli. It's not great news. So Samuel's at a place of not wanting to share that. But you can't do that with Yahweh. It's not, we don't get to be personal about these things. We don't get to shape it and twist it and make it the way we want it to be because this is somebody that we love and care about. So Samuel lay there until morning, then opened the doors of the Lord's house. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. He does, because Eli insisted on it. But more and more visions come in, more and more the voice of the Lord, more and more. He's just receiving more. And his reputation grows. And he's a unique judge. Like nobody has had the relationship with Yahweh that as a judge that Samuel has. So Samuel grew up, and the Lord was with him, not allowing any of his words to fail. All Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, knew that Samuel was trustworthy as the Lord's prophet. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh because the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh through the Lord's own word. It's pretty powerful. They knew that they can trust him because everything that he said, thus saith the Lord made sure it happened. So, yeah, let's put this one to bed for a second time. And I'm just checking my meter here, yeah, and I see it moving. So the audio did record this time. So thank you for your patience. Sorry that if you guys are looking at this for a second time, or if you thought there was something wrong with your computer, it's all on me, and I'm sorry. Just thank you guys for your faithfulness. Thank you for going through this with me, and I pray that you continue to receive from the Lord mightily from His Word. God bless.